Well, hi everyone, and welcome to this session of ExecuNet Masterclass. I'm your host, Tony Vlahos, and my guest this hour is the CEO of the Predictive Index, Mr. Mike Zani. Hiring decisions are the most critical choices a leader makes, but most of us fail miserably at selecting and hiring. So why is that, and how can we get better at it? That's the topic of today's session and Mike's area of expertise. Pretty important stuff, and part of our commitment here at ExecuNet to connect you with higher value thinking that can transform how you work and how you lead.
So technology, in 40 years, these patterns change drastically for what ostensibly is the same role. So I'd like to dive into the second part of the schematic human, which is the cognitive assessment. And you look at cognitive, and what we talk about with cognitive is general cognitive ability. The psychometricians call it G, and simply put, in real people terms, is a person's ability to learn. How fast does someone learn? And academics do not agree on many things. There is, however, overwhelming evidence and overwhelming agreement that G predicts job performance. And as a matter of fact, it is the #1 predictor of workplace performance. And this is only becoming more so because of increasing complexity due to technology, the hyper-connectedness of our world, and the accelerated rates of change that are required in the business world today. And I'd like to take you through another schematic of this. So here we have an X and Y axis. On the vertical you have change, on the horizontal you have time. Here we have this idyllic purple company where there's very little change over time. So think hospital, academic institution, a department of a large organization like the accounting department for, call it GE or Boeing. And here we have a blue candidate, someone who learns quickly, slightly higher G, where it takes them a little bit of time to ramp up, but they get to a really good place. Then you have this red candidate. It takes a little bit more time for them to ramp up, but they, like the blue candidate, they get to a really good place and they're a fantastic employee and they'll be there for a long period of time. Now we have this company which has a much more significant environmental complexity, constantly changing over time. Now the blue candidate is catching up, falling behind, catching up, falling behind, but for the most part keeps up, whereas this red candidate is just falling farther and farther behind and is not keeping up with the environmental complexity. I bring this up because your organizations, whether you have a complicated product, whether you have a complicated marketplace, whether you have a lot of external competition, or just the entire marketplace dynamics like healthcare in today's world is in a constant flux, you need individuals with really high G to deal with that environmental complexity. So ultimately, this is all about fit. And without fit, you have de-energized employees. If someone is in the wrong behavioral position for their job, or they don't have the cognitive capabilities to keep up with their job, they are going to be de-energized. They are not going to survive. And I leave you with this W. Edward Deming quote, were they dead when you hired them or have you killed them? And if you have low morale, if you have a sort of sluggish corporate culture, it is often based on fit within your organization.
With that, let's turn to the first question, Mike, which has to do with interviewing. And the question I'm getting is, we get that, unstructured interviews are what they are. But when we turn to other forms of interviews, like case interviews and what someone has termed a brain teaser, I don't know exactly what that means, but I would imagine it's one of these problem-solving kind of moments in an interview that reveals something about someone. Are these more valuable than the unstructured interview or just different? What's your sense about that?
Tony, I love that question. This one hits really personally. I was the person on our management team who always took candidates through the case interviewing questions, often called Fermi questions, or as someone said, a brain teaser. The question, how many golf balls can fit in a plane? And the question that I used to love asking was, please estimate how much oxygen is in the Earth's atmosphere. that was a question that I pulled off of I was a geochemistry major and I pulled it off, my senior year final. And it was something that my my impression of how the interviewee was doing was really based on if did they answer the question similarly to how I might address the question. Google has stopped using case study questions because they did a study that says the only thing that case study questions do is make the interviewee think the interviewer is pompous. And it's one of these situations that your impression of how the person's doing on that question is not validated. When you use something like a cognitive based assessment, we're validating this tool to get that answer for you. So if you want to hire, quote unquote, smart people, pull in a cognitive based assessment, trust the assessment, which has been validated for repeatability and again several metrics, and save yourself the pain, suffering, and humiliation of being thought of being pompous. And really, when you're structuring your interviews, you should be talking to, say, if you're interviewing with 4 key managers, that all 4 managers are looking for a different aspect of the interview. So you're not asking all the same questions. One person might be looking at business acumen. Another person might be looking at direct experience in that field. Another person might be looking at cultural fit for the organization. Another person could ask a question about ethically challenging situations that you've been in. So I would really spend your time in structuring your interview on things that humans are good at, like fit for your organization culturally, than I would on really just waving a flag at these case interview questions.